On this episode of the Game Time Guru, I've got the local hockey expert, CC, in the house to discuss something big that's happening in the NHL.
That's right. This is CC Hawkley here talking about the Vegas Golden Knights and how they're not just smashing expectations in the NHL as an expansion franchise, but in all sports pro leagues as well.
Are you ready for this, CC?
I am totally ready for this. Let's do this.
All right, buckle up. This is
the Game Time Guru.
So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Game Time Guru. I'm your host, Shane Larson, as you know, and as I said in the introduction, I've got the local hockey expert here, CC Hawkley, in the house once again as we break down the Vegas Golden Knights. And CC, I don't know, 5, 6 times? I don't know how many times you've been with me now.
This is going to be number 5.
Of course you would know. You would know number 5.
I'm kind of a numbers geek that way, so yeah, that just naturally tallies in my head.
So number 5 with me. However, like we said the last time, you joined me for the Jersey Talk with Derek Drury, and we talked about your new endeavors, right?
That's
and
correct.
What you had started. And you had mentioned the Sin Bin. I kind of want to talk about this first. CC, and your content that you're putting out there. What are some of the things you've been writing for the Sin Bin? You're covering the Steelheads. Cover that a little bit more for us.
So mainly I'm doing game recaps for the Sin Bin.
Okay.
I started at the end of November, and I've probably produced about 7 or 8 game recaps. I did a feature piece as my first piece, interviewing the Director of Media Relations and Broadcasting, Brian McCormick.
Okay.
He calls all of the Steelheads games on radio and TV, all 72 games, both home and away. And I also did another feature piece on Tulsa Oilers alternate captain Joey Sides. He actually grew up in Sun Valley, Idaho, and so I got a little interview with him and wrote a feature piece on that. Otherwise, I've just been doing game recaps and holding it down that way.
And you kind of have your own little podcast out there right now. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I put the interviews that I do normally with a player and the coach.
Okay.
Is what I do. I edit them real quick. It's usually anywhere between 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 minute interviews between the coach and the player. And then I also do episodes. I just finished up episode 5. I'm trying to put them out every week on a Tuesday.
On Tuesdays.
Okay. And I kind of have divvied it up into 3 sections. I start off with a section called Home Cooking.
Okay.
And I talk about the Idaho Steelheads for the first portion of the podcast. And then the middle section is called Puck World. And,
nice.
and you go into the hockey world at large, just what's going on, NHL, World, Olympics, things like that. And then the closing one I've just kind of been using as a kind of a little, decompress sort of thing, just whatever I've been kind of learning in my life regarding either podcasts or in general. I talked about relief versus restoration when you're taking a break.
Right.
And just because you get relief from something doesn't mean that you're being rejuvenated and restored.
Right.
So kind of a little nugget of, I guess you could call it wisdom. But,
yeah.
But, just whatever I feel led to share, 3 to 5 minutes of whatever's going on in my life.
Man, to be honest with you, I love that part of it because you're not only dropping sports knowledge, do your thing, talking about, hockey and what you're passionate about. I loved that. Like, you threw that in there and it was like, this is a nice little kick. And you're easy to listen to, as everybody already knows. Like, it's an easy listen and it's interesting. But for my listeners that may not know where to find your podcast at, where can they find it?
They can go on cchawkley.podbean.com. I'm in at podbean.com. PODBEAN. And I'm trying to get, more diversified like your podcast, to get it available on iTunes and, other platforms as well, maybe YouTube and things like that. But
okay.
For the meantime, cchawkley.podbean.com.
Nice. All right, go check it out. He's, as you guys know, he's the hockey expert. He's easy to listen to. He's fun. He's got his thing going on. What is the most important thing, or what's the best thing you've learned so far since you've started writing and you're seeing success there, and you started kind of doing the audio version with the podcast? What have you learned, and how do you feel like you've been growing?
Oh man, it's it can be a bit of a grind sometimes.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I tackled the relief versus restoration in the last podcast. Last night I covered the Idaho Steelheads versus the Allen Americans, and I'm just so amped up after the game that there's just a bunch of thoughts running through my head. It would be really difficult for me to work for a newspaper and have a solid midnight, 1 o'clock deadline, because usually I'm up until 2 or 3 in the morning and just, trying to whittle it down and just get it taken care of. I've really enjoyed the camaraderie with some of the other sin bin riders.
Right.
For some of the AHL teams and ECHL teams, we have a big group direct message going on Twitter, and we just bounce ideas off of each other. And the way that these guys are just immersed in the game, I mean, even so much more so than I ever am. They know all of the ripples and all of the inklings and all of the rumblings going on in the hockey world and the ECHL world. It amazes me, and just to glean some of that every time I log into that group chat or group tweet or whatever you want to call it. It's humbling, and it's very stimulating as well.
That's so cool, man. Like, you get to, that's cool. If you're meeting new people, that's one of the things I've learned in this podcast, like, journey that I've had now that's been going on for a year this month. Just meeting other podcasters that are like-minded sports podcasters, for that matter, and some others that aren't even related to sports, but like just meeting other people in social media groups and stuff. You just network, and when you're around people like that, it's really motivating, because you get to see people maybe that are like even more so into sports than I am, which I never thought could happen. Now I realize I'm like, there's a lot of people that love sports just like I do, if not more, and they have a lot more knowledge, but you can bounce ideas off each other, and you learn a lot from that. I want to talk about some, just real quick, go over some brief sports topics, for that matter. Today is Saturday. We're going to be pushing this out next Friday, but it's the first day of the NFL playoffs. I kind of want to get your thoughts, since I haven't talked to you for a couple of weeks in regards to this. What was your thoughts on the NFL season, just to go over this real quick?
Man, it was it was kind of weird.
Yeah,
weird. It was really unpredictable. I mean, for the first time in a long time, you don't have the Packers in the playoffs. You don't have the Cowboys in the playoffs. Sorry, Shane.
I know, it's garbage.
You don't have these, major players that you normally see. Denver's not in it,
No.
Yep, no, they sure ain't. Of course I bring them up. But no, you just have these major players that, you would expect to see in the playoffs that just didn't make it. So you've got Jacksonville. I mean, they had a sneaky good season.
Right.
They're the number 3 seed in the AFC. They're going to be playing the Bills. You want to talk about sneaking into the playoffs. The Bills sent a whole grip of buffalo wings to Cincinnati, because Cincinnati, their victory was contingent on the Bills. Well,
right.
Yeah, the Bills making the playoffs was contingent on Cincinnati winning. So, yeah, they're the 6th seed, and you've got the Titans sneaking in there. You've also got the Los Angeles Rams against the Falcons. I mean, there's just a lot of new faces this year,
right,
that weren't in there last year.
And I want your thoughts on this. Do you think any of those one-offs, let's just say the Bills or the Titans, do you think any of them actually have a shot of getting past the wild card? Or is it just more of a, moral victory? We got there. That's what we needed to do now. It's a stepping stone.
I think if Kansas City kind of pulls himself up by their bootstraps and, just kind of hunkers down and, just does what they did, if they continue doing what they did earlier in the season, I mean, yeah, they kind of stumbled midway through and even into the later part of the season, but I don't see Tennessee going past the wild card round. The Bills, I think, could have a chance to upset Jacksonville, quote-unquote upset, because Blake Bortles is kind of
bipolar.
Bipolar is a really good word for it. He's very bipolar, so he could, have a multiple turnover game, and that'll be it for the Jaguars this season. But yeah, the Bills, I think, would have a better chance than the Titans to move on.
I'm kind of with you on that. And something that's interesting is the NFC South. You got the Falcons, you got the Saints, you got the Panthers. I got 3 teams in there this year. I'm taking for my wild card, or I wouldn't even say wild card, but my dark horse. I think the Saints legitimately are the best team in the league right now. They're the hottest. With the Eagles losing their quarterback, obviously Wentz goes down at the end of the season. You just never know. Not saying they can't do it, but I just don't know yet. It's the unknown with Foles starting for them. And then I don't know if I trust the Rams yet. They have a great defense. I just don't know yet. So I think the Saints, with their experience and the way that they're playing, they actually have a balanced attack with running and passing. Man, and their defense finally has learned how to play football. Like, they've never been a defensive team. They've always been one-sided, and I think this is the most well-rounded Saints team I've seen in a while. I would not be surprised. We'll see what happens after this weekend, maybe next week when this launches. I'm completely wrong, but I think the Saints have a good shot at making a run for it, dude.
Shane, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you've got the veteran leadership of Drew Brees. I think he just turned 39 years old. Can you believe that?
Yeah, he's a grandpa, just like Brady. Isn't that
just
funny?
Like Brady. Yeah, just like Brady, and they're still balling out as
unreal.
grandpas. Seriously. And Jared Goff is very young. The Rams' offense runs through Todd Gurley.
Right.
That's the thing, is that they're not as diversified as the Saints offense. You have Drew Brees, you've got a young Michael Thomas, you've got Willie Snead, and then you've got the two-headed monster of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram.
Yes.
So you don't have just like a single back, offense and having the whole offense run through, Todd Gurley like Los Angeles, but with New Orleans. Yeah, they're sneaky. They're definitely a dark horse. Carolina, I wouldn't sleep on Carolina though, because Cam's been there. Christian McCaffrey's a good young running back.
Yeah, he's looking good.
But they dealt away Kelvin Benjamin to Buffalo, so it's like, who really? I mean, they got Greg Olsen back.
Yeah.
From injuries. So
Olsen's playing well. He's always consistent, but like you said, I mean, I think other receivers have stepped up for the Panthers, like Funchess and stuff. But you know what? Like, they don't have that consistent play in my mind. I do think that because they have been there in recent years, they might have a shot at it. But I'm excited for the playoffs because, like you said it was weird. Perfect way to describe the NFL. It's like completely different than every year. And now, obviously, the Patriots on the AFC are probably going to run through. The Steelers may have a shot at taking them out if they get there, but I still think the Patriots are the front runner there. But, man, in the NFC, it's a wide-open race. Now, in the NBA, real quick, I want your thoughts on the Balls, okay? So I'm talking about the Ball family, big baller brand, BBB. And LiAngelo and LaMelo are now over in Lithuania, about to start playing over there this year. I just kind of want your thoughts because we don't talk a lot about the NBA, minus the jerseys that we just talked about, but, like, I want to know what your thoughts are on the Ball family and what's going on there with Lonzo on the Lakers and the two brothers now heading over to Lithuania.
I kind of want to be a stick in the mud and saying that that's not really NBA because you didn't even mention Lonzo, who's in the NBA.
Yeah. And
I just kind of want to ignore that whole thing. But you brought it up, so I will entertain it and not. I'll entertain that. I think them going over to Lithuania is just kind of it's mind-boggling, just for their father to kind of uproot them both.
Right.
I can't even keep the two younger brothers straight. Who was going to UCLA? Was it
LiAngelo was at UCLA,
right,
and LaMelo's in high school.
LiAngelo was at UCLA. He got in trouble for some shoplifting accusations while the team was in China, and then LeVar just pulled him out of UCLA, and they both bounced to Lithuania. I mean, $500 a month. They're in a country where the head coach does not speak a lick of English for the team that they're playing for. So I think that wherever LeVar goes, he's going to create a media storm and just kind of stir up attention, stir up, promotion. And I don't know if it's the best business plan, but apparently it's working.
Yeah.
Because all the pundits are talking about him. We're talking about him.
Yep.
We're talking about a couple of young kids playing in Lithuania, for crying out loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, whatever he's doing, I guess it's working.
It's working, and I fell victim to it. Like you said, I'm talking about it. I even brought him up. Now let's get into the real NBA real quick.
Okay.
Who's your MVP this season so far? We're almost midway through the year. I kind of want to see what you think. There's a lot of good players out there this year.
Man, just like the All-Star vote, kind of reflects Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah. How did you say his last name?
Oh boy,
I can't say it, so that's why I'm actually impressed.
Antetokounmpo.
Not even surprised at all, though.
Yeah, I mean, me and Derek, we've mentioned Giannis a few times, so Giannis Antetokounmpo. I have to say it fast, otherwise I'll second guess myself. But Giannis has really stepped up for Milwaukee. I mean, he was already doing that with the Bucks last season. But he's really taken it to another level this year. Kyrie in Boston. Oh my goodness! I mean,
he's having quite a season.
Every time I see him on SportsCenter, every time I see him play, it's phenomenal. I mean, I would say Westbrook isn't as impressive as he was last year, but I mean, you got James Harden in Houston. Houston's doing great this year. Gosh, MVP this year. Of course, LeBron's always in the running, but man, anywhere between Kyrie, Giannis, and LeBron, I mean, it's still halfway through the season.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, huh?
We got a lot of basketball left to be played, but that's why we've got all-star selections going on right now instead of the MVP race. But yeah, I'd say those three are pretty well the front runners.
Who do you pick winning the NBA Finals this year, just if you had to choose right now, based on what you're seeing?
If I had to choose right now, I would say I would say the Golden State Warriors.
Still
they're
riding high.
They're 31-8 right now, which is very surprising because they kind of stuttered out of the gate this season.
Mm-hmm.
But they're first in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
So just based on who Steph Curry is, who Kevin Durant is, and who the supporting cast is, I mean, you can't go against experience and you can't go against that roster.
I totally agree. Somehow they keep getting better every year with new additions to the team. Somehow they keep getting new additions, and it frustrates me. But they're probably I'm with you on that one. I still think they're the front runner for the finals. Now, let's jump into what we wanted to discuss mainly on today's show, the main topic, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, we've brought up the Golden Knights in previous podcasts. You've talked about how the expansion draft was actually going to take place before it even happened, and you educated the listeners on how that process goes. And then we also had an article that you wrote about the city of Las Vegas, how sports were going there, all this stuff. So we've kind of brought light to this situation already. Now we're, into the season, and this team is seeing a lot of success. But that's really weird because typically these expansion teams, I shouldn't say typically, but it is very more often than not is what I'll say. Expansion teams experience what we call the expansion blues, especially in their first season or two. And it's just crazy to see an expansion team having this success. Let's talk about some teams that might have, like the Orlando Magic, for instance. Teams that didn't see success early into their tenure. Do you remember the Orlando Magic, or at least the story of them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I even refreshed myself with the ESPN 30 for 30.
Yes.
This Magic moment.
Yeah, one of the best.
One of the best.
I like that one.
It was very good. Very good.
Yeah, so I was looking into this, and that 30 for 30, they won a total of 70 games in their first 3 seasons. So people, they think that the Magic, they had Shaq, right, when they first started all this stuff, and they saw success. No, it took them a few years to actually see success. 70 games in the first 3 seasons is not very good. That's terrible in the NBA, okay? So, they were bad basketball team. Going into baseball, the Arizona Diamondbacks, 65 games in their first year. But we all know baseball, they play 195. No, I'm just kidding. But they play a lot of games.
142
right?
games.
There you go.
Or 162, yeah.
A lot of games.
A lot of games.
To only win 65, some people think 65 games is a great thing. No, 65 games is awful. Houston Texans. Do you remember the Texans when they were the expansion team in the NFL?
I do, yeah.
See, I remember the Texans because here's what happened. First off, David Carr was on Fresno, and Boise State played Fresno. We actually upset them when they were the 8th team in the country. They were actually making a run for it to be in the national championship that year. They were the underdog team that was coming through, ranked number 8. Boise State goes into Fresno and upsets them on national TV, right? And it was amazing. It was on a Friday night, I believe, and it was insane. Such an awesome game. But I remember just watching that, and David Carr's season was ruined because Boise State upset him. And then he gets to be the first pick in the draft. Texans are the expansion team. And their very first game, the inaugural game, was in the preseason against the Dallas Cowboys. And we had Quincy Carter as our quarterback, and we were all excited for the season. We're like, we're going to do really well. Quincy Carter's a stud. He's athletic. This is going to be great. We go into Houston for their inaugural game. We lose in the preseason game. It was 19-10 or something like that. It was we looked awful. Nothing's changed. But the Texans had a really, really bad season. They ended up 4-12, I believe. It was their final record, but they were awful. And even for a couple of years after that with David Carr, he never had an offensive line. The Texans couldn't put together a solid team, and a lot of people were saying, well, that's just too difficult to do. When you have all these NFL teams that are already put together, they're already got these established organizations, established teams, veteran leadership and stuff, and then you try to put these teams, these players together piece by piece. It's different than doing a free agent pickup like the Miami Heat did with LeBron James and Chris Bosh to join Dwayne Wade. You can't just pick the greatest players. You have a process that you have to go through, and it takes some time to mesh. And the Texans never saw it. They were terrible. And then the Charlotte Bobcats. Do you remember when they came back to Charlotte? So they moved over to New Orleans, and then they put the Charlotte team back in there in the Bobcats.
Right. Yep. And Jordan in the leadership,
dude,
the ownership group and. Yeah, it was a big deal, but they didn't make a very big deal on the court. That's for sure.
And they had I was looking at the roster yesterday as I was putting this together because I remember them coming in there and they had Gerald Wallace, he turned out to be probably their best player, but he wasn't even that great. He was very athletic, long, lanky, athletic guy. But Emeka Okafor, who was the center for UConn,
yep,
great player, but he's very undersized for an NBA standards.
Right.
They picked him I think it was the second pick of the draft. Emeka Okafor. And then he never really did anything for him, unfortunately. And they just had this roster full of nobodies, basically. And that's just how it is usually with expansion teams.
Mm-hmm.
They usually don't have like they put together the team, and it's just they experience the expansion blues. Now, you wrote about the Golden Knights. You've talked about Vegas specifically. Let's talk about how they did not experience, or they have not experienced, knock on wood, the expansion blues. Okay, let's talk about this. The concern was the fact that we didn't know that the fans would show up to the games. That's one of the things. How have the fans been?
Oh my goodness, the fans have just.
Go ahead. Dude.
Shane, you're dying over there.
Hey, man.
The fans have just eaten the Golden Knights up. They are the only pro game in town. You've got hundreds of fans going to practices. I mean,
That's insane.
It's insane. It's just hockey fever has really gripped Vegas. Being on Twitter and being active on Twitter, the Vegas Golden Knights Twitter account is just pure fire.
Really?
Like it is. There's just a bunch of pop culture references. It's intriguing. It's not just your bland, and so scored the goal with so-and-so getting the assist. They're starting to name, give the players nicknames and take ownership of the players. William Karlsson, they call him Wild Bill.
Okay.
You adhere to this Wild West motif out in Las Vegas. You've got Wild Bill Karlsson, even though he's Swedish. It's like it's phenomenal. Like the fans in the Vegas area have really grown attached, and they've really taken ownership of the team and made them their own.
That's so rad, man. Like, that's what I'm seeing is that, like, the fans love it. Their attendance at the games is insane. From what I saw, like, they have, like, 14,000 season ticket holders. For a team that wasn't even existing, that showed that the fans wanted a pro sports team.
Oh, yeah.
14,000. That's a lot of people for a stadium that doesn't even hold 18. Like, it's like 17,000 some odd people, like 800 or something. I don't know.
I don't know the exact number that T-Mobile Arena holds, but you look at the Arizona Coyotes, and they're not doing well. They haven't done well for a long time, but Commissioner Gary Bettman, he's got a very soft spot in his heart for the Arizona Coyotes and hockey in the desert and what have you. But for Vegas, people were predicting, okay, it's going to be the same thing as Arizona. People are going to kind of be, they're going to kind of be, excited about it for the first season or two, and then it's going to trickle off. They're not going to do well because they're an expansion team. They're just crushing all expectations, though.
It's insane, dude. They're okay. Keep in mind, they are averaging 17,854 people, according to ESPN.com, when I check that per game. Like, that's a sellout, essentially, for them, because I don't even think it holds that many seats by rule, but they obviously, we know how that goes.
There's standing room only seats and tickets that they sell, yeah.
That means that they are pretty much selling out every single game that they go to, and the demand for season tickets, I guess, is going up, from what I was told. For a team that hasn't even proven themselves, 14,000 season tickets, averaging over 17,000 people at the games. That's a lot of money coming into the economy as well. Like,
right.
It's amazing, and a lot of it has to do with the success on the ice, right? They're having a lot of success this year, which is, like we said, it's unheard of, I guess. It's just not a normal thing for an expansion team. What have you noticed as far as, like, what contributes to their success on the ice? What do you think is the reason for this?
Well, let's rewind a few months. I mean,
Okay.
you go back, you remember the shooting that occurred in Las Vegas.
Right.
And I believe it took place on October 1st. And that was right at the point where the Vegas Golden Knights were starting their season. Their opening game at T-Mobile Arena, they just, they honored the victims. They
Right.
honored the first responders. And so with something like that, it's just it's a matter of something being deeper than just a hockey team.
Right.
And when it's already, completely sewn into and hard woven by, fire, it's just tried in a crucible, if you will, this idea of a team just identifying itself rather with a city.
Right.
I mean, Vegas, just completely entrenched themselves into, being Vegas strong.
Exactly.
As they put it. And so, with that kind of identity that was forged at the very beginning of the season, I mean, the timing couldn't have been, if a tragedy like this was going to occur, which heaven forbid it ever does occur.
Right.
But if a tragedy was going to occur, to have something as unifying as a sports team to rally around and to, dare I say, distract from, and help cope with this tragedy, that's definitely something that's gonna solidify a franchise in a city.
Right. And you know what? We don't like to see tragedies like that happen, obviously, but I brought it up multiple times. The main reason I started this podcast is because I truly believe that sports, we know what's happening in the NFL. Obviously, there's some discussion going on there, but typically sports bring people together. They will unify people, fans in particular, because you can get away from all those things that are going on in the world, and for those 2 or 3 hours that you're at that sporting event, you are unified for one common goal. You're cheering on your team. So it makes you feel like this unity, which we don't always see in the world. So that's what's really cool to see, and I'm glad you brought that up, is that the timing couldn't have been better for this. Now, on the ice itself, they're killing it, and I just want to make sure the listeners know what's going on. So I see that their defense is actually holding pretty strong. They're playing really well together from what I was able to see. But from the hockey expert, who's probably the best player on the Golden Knights for Vegas? Do you know? What would you say is the best player, or is it just the whole team effort?
I would say a lot of it is a team effort.
Okay.
You've got obviously your captain. He was an alternate captain in Nashville. I brought him up during the first podcast, but James Neal.
Yes.
He's been hurt off and on this season, but he's really been a stabilizing figure there. You've got Marc-Andre Fleury, who's got 3 Stanley Cup championships to his name. He was the goaltender for Pittsburgh. He is getting older. I think he's 32 years old, and so with him having kind of a veteran presence in goal, that's helped as well. But the thing is, their goalie situation hasn't been solid. They've had 5 different starting goaltenders this year. Normally, you've got your starter, your primary goaltender, and your backup. And your backup is going to start a number of games during the season because you don't want your starter getting tired.
Right.
That's the thing. But with Marc-Andre Fleury, he played 4 games, and then he got hurt. He got injured. I believe he had concussion-related symptoms, and so he had to sit out. So the backup, Malcolm Subban, came in, and then he got hurt. And then you bring in Oscar Dansk from the Chicago Wolves, and then he got hurt. And then you bring in this kid, Dylan Ferguson, who's 19 years old, playing for the Western Hockey League, and then he gets hurt. It's just he didn't get hurt. No, he was the 5th goaltender. I missed one in there somewhere, but Maxime Lagacé.
Okay.
Maxime Lagacé. It's a French-Canadian name, and I struggle so bad with French-Canadian pronunciations.
But you can say Giannis.
Antetokounmpo?
There you go. So you can say that, but you can't say that.
I guess I'm okay. I'm okay with Greek, but yeah, when it comes to French, man, the Idaho Steelheads goaltender is Philippe Desrosiers. I have a bad habit of calling him DeRosiers.
Oh.
But it's DeRosier. So, yeah, but Maxime Lagacé, he was the 4th goaltender, and then he got hurt, and then Dylan Ferguson. Anyway, so I would say Neal. I would say William Karlsson, like I brought up. He's a promising young player. I would say as well that you've also got gentleman by the name of Jonathan Marchessault.
Okay.
Again, another French-Canadian name that I struggle with. Marchessault. He's 27. He's a young forward. They actually signed him to a 6-year, $30 million contract.
I just saw that.
Yes.
So,
a lot of these guys are just role players that were cast-offs, that were relegated to the expansion draft by, a random amount of teams. And Vegas has kind of rallied around that point and said, this is the revenge tour. Your previous team thought that you weren't good enough to be part of that franchise, so we picked you up because we thought you would be good for our franchise. So let's go out and prove your former team wrong. And they've been doing that. Through 40 games, the record is 28 wins, 10 losses, and 2 overtime losses. You get a point for an overtime loss in the NHL. So that's 58 points. That's good for first place in the Pacific Division. That's also good for first place in the Western Conference.
Isn't that insane?
Those are video game numbers. Me and my buddy, we simulated a season on NHL 18 with Vegas, and about at the halfway point, I think they're doing better in reality than they were on NHL 18. James Neal's an 84, and he's their quote-unquote star player on NHL 18. Everybody else, even Marc-Andre Fleury, is like an 81. So 99 being the top.
Yeah.
And having a few players that are at least in the 90s, that's what you expect to have in a team. But with an expansion team, all those teams that you listed, one, you have to build chemistry over a number of years.
Right.
Two, you have to, draft or trade or pick up in free agency superstars. A good example of that, Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway.
Right.
For the Magic. And three, it's just a matter of having, establishing yourself in your market. You've got chemistry, you need the need for picking up superstars, and just the learning curve of the culture in the market, especially in a place like Las Vegas.
Man, to me, it's just insane. And this actually brings up a point. I wonder what's going to happen when the Raiders go there. Do you think that the success that the Golden Knights have had with Vegas is going to kind of, I guess, you're going to see the same success with the Raiders going over there or not? Because I wonder if the city's so excited because it's an expansion team. The Raiders are already an established franchise for the National Football League, and they're going over there as an established franchise now with the new coach and everything like that, and they're going to be over there shortly. But I wonder if the city will be as excited to have the football team as they are with the hockey team or not. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, Shane, I think that John Gruden's really he's gonna come in there and he's really gonna establish a veteran presence. That's my best John Gruden.
Spider ZY banana.
Spider ZY banana. That's the best John Gruden I can do. I am no Frank Caliendo, but man, no, John Gruden coming in there, picking him up for 10 years at $100 million. I don't know if he's necessarily worth that.
Right.
But I definitely think to have a familiar face and to have an established veteran coach to bring the team into Vegas. You've got a good franchise quarterback in Derek Carr. I just heard this on the radio coming in this morning when, before our podcast. You've got the defensive player in Khalil Mack, to establish the defense and give the defense a face. I think the Raiders actually have a better chance of establishing themselves in Vegas than the Golden Knights ever did.
Okay.
Because you've got an established team. You've got, your franchise quarterback. You've got your franchise defensive player. You've got this identity with John Gruden, it's just, you've got all these solid factors that you can bring the team in for a couple of years, and they're Oakland as a franchise is building up towards that. They're preparing for 2020 in that regard.
Right.
Vegas just had to cobble everything together, and the sum is definitely greater than the parts for Vegas. But I do think the Vegas community, as surprising as it was that they embraced the Golden Knights, I think they'll do the same for the Raiders.
Okay.
I think they will, and I think having the backing of just the new stadium and the growing economy in Vegas, especially with the Golden Knights there and just what's going on, Vegas is on par with Boise, just in regards as the metropolitan area is growing,
right?
And the suburbs are thriving, and I don't see why the Raiders would have a problem.
That's awesome. And let's go to the Golden Knights. I kind of want to bring up this as well. Here's the thing, like for people like myself that aren't like major hockey fans, I would consider myself more of a hockey fan now in the last like 6 to 7 months than I ever was before, mainly because we've been talking and I've been following you now with the Sin Bin and everything. And I have more of this passion for hockey than I had before, which is the whole point that I wanted to bring you onto the podcast. So it's actually working for me, and I love that. So like,
sure,
the reason I brought you on here in the first place is I wanted to expand like on my sports knowledge for the listeners, and it's actually hitting me the hardest. So like that's good.
That's great.
But for other people that like, might just be the casual hockey fan, a lot of them are talking about the jerseys of the Golden Knights. And since we talked about jerseys with like the basketball talk and this and that and had some fun with that discussion, I want to get your take on the jerseys for the Golden Knights. Everyone talks about how cool their logo is. I want to know what your personal opinion is.
Oh man, a few people panned the logo. They're like, oh, the helmet, just looks silly, and they kind of photoshopped it onto Magneto from X-Men. They're like, and King Leonidas from 300, and they're like,
right?
This is Vegas, and it's just they kind of panned it. But no, I love the unique color scheme. You've kind of got that, and if you look closely enough, they kind of have like that velvety fabric, like almost like this like Vegas velvet that you would see like at a craps table or something like that.
Okay.
So you've got the red, you've got this velvety gold, you've got this gray, and then you've got the helmet, and it's just it works. You've got the neutral palette for the gray, But then you've also got these gold and kind of a deep hue of purple to kind of play off the royalty aspect of
Right.
it. And then the red and the gold. And then their alternate logo is the little kind of star cross thing that you see on the
Yep.
Welcome to Las Vegas sign. And so to really root their identity with the city, but not to go over the top and make it like a gambling reference or anything like that, I love them. I think they look
They did
great.
a good job.
They did a really good job.
And it's just like you said, there's like this sentimental value, like because they were able to take the roots of Vegas. And here's the problem, like in the NBA with the Utah Jazz, like we'll probably have a discussion about this later, but like the Jazz is a New Orleans reference, the Jazz. So it doesn't really sit with Utah. Now, Utah used to make their jerseys with the mountains, and that was more of a Utah thing. And they have this alternate jersey that's disgusting, but some people like it, some people don't. But they also have this alternate court that they're going to make that has the mountains. So they're trying to change things up a little bit in Utah to make it like more sentimental to have the roots, because they believe that is a big, important part of a team and an organization. That is huge. You have to have some sort of root into the city that you're playing in. I believe you really do. And the Vegas Golden Knights have done that for the exact, like the way that you just explained it. They've done that. They like found a way to pull like the roots, the fabric, whatever. Like it just looks like you're at a crafts table. Just the little tiny things like that can get the casual fan like myself and others that I know to pay attention. And then it also makes the people within the city, feel like they're part of that organization, that franchise, especially with an expansion team that wasn't there before. It's kind of hard to like just get everybody's hearts there because maybe those fans were rooting for other teams. Maybe those fans were like me. I live in Idaho. I root for the Utah Jazz, the Dallas Cowboys. I don't live in those cities, but like if a team came here, it'd be hard to drag me away from those. And they did a good job at like getting those fans to like really embrace the team. It's really cool to watch. I want to know if you think the success of this team is going to continue, or is this just a quick like, oh, we're all hyped up, they're playing well as a team, and they don't really have the superstar, quote unquote. They have like a lot of good role players that are playing great. Do you think the success will continue on?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, I called into Scott Farrell on the bench on October 18th, and I was kind of stoked about it. I love calling into the national shows on the radio and see if I can get in and give my 2 cents worth. But when I talked to Scott Farrell and I brought up Vegas to him, I said, this is a pretty good start for the team. And he's like, well, yeah, I think they had like 6 wins and maybe 1 or 2 losses at the time. And he's like, in his raspy voice, he's like, well, it's just something that it's not sustainable, and they're going to be facing a lot of hard teams coming up, and it just you can't produce that throughout the season. It's just not going to work.
Where's CC? Scott?
I'm right here, Shane. I'm right.
There
I'm
you are.
right here. I'm back. So, but it was something that was a concern for the guys on that. They're like, yeah, they've got formidable opponents coming up, and they're not. They're not going to do too well in regards to the Chicagos or the St. Louis or the Tampa Bays. Well, they've got some signature wins since that point. I mean, last night even they beat the Chicago Blackhawks 5-4. And Chicago, they are last in the Central Division, but they've got, Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Corey Crawford, these guys that have won 3 Stanley Cups on their franchise. They're nothing to shake a stick at. They've built that chemistry.
Right.
They know what they're doing. But on December 14th, they defeated the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion Pittsburgh Penguins 2-1. They edged the league-leading Tampa Bay Lightning 4-3 on December 19th. They shut out the Metropolitan Division leading Washington Capitals 3-0 on December 23rd. And the Western Conference champions from last year, the Nashville Predators, they also shut them out 3-0 on January 2nd. They had a winning streak going back to December 3rd of, I want to say, 10-0-1. They were undefeated up until they lost to St. Louis a couple nights ago.
Dude.
Yeah. I mean, they pieced together a winning streak, and you saw those names. You had your Pittsburgh Penguins, you had your
Right.
Tampa Bay Lightning, you had your Nashville Predators, you had your Washington Capitals, these perennial playoff teams. And Vegas they're hunkering down, and they're proving that they can win these tough games. And it's kind of exciting. It's actually more than kind of exciting. It's phenomenal, and it's really cool to be a part of.
So here's what I have for you. When they continue to see this success and they finish off the season strong, I need you to call back to Pharrell, Okay, and you quote him just like you did now, right? And you use the voice and everything, and you shove it right in his face that you were right, that it can be sustainable. And then we'll have a discussion about that as Pharrell tries to tear you apart.
Oh man,
and you put him in his place.
Oh,
I can't wait.
Oh man, history is just it wasn't on my side. I
Right.
was stoked because they're in our TV market.
Right.
They're a close team, like you said. I mean, I'm a Colorado Avalanche fan. I grew up in Colorado. I was there when they moved from Quebec. I've got my Quebec Nordique swag on today. And they moved from Quebec, for the 95-96 season. And that was my identity established. But to fans here in Idaho, this is where the Vegas Golden Knights TV market is at. So,
Right.
but, I mean, history showed that, you had 63 expansion teams that, over the major four, the major four leagues.
Right.
The NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, and the NBA, none of them finished their first season with a winning record. The closest that came was the 93-94 Florida Panthers. They finished 33-34-17.
Close,
but no cigar. But 21 of those teams had the worst record in the league in their first season. Most notable were the 76 Bucks, the Yucks, who went 0-14, and the 62 Mets, who lost a Major League Baseball record 120 games. So, you're talking about just flying in the face of history. It's just a matter of statistics. Pharrell,
right?
I don't fault him. It would be a very fun and joyous experience to call him back and to be like, "Hey, Pharrell, listen, you were saying that Vegas didn't want to, they're not going to be sustainable. They're not going to beat the big boys, and you're wrong, and just call him back and just kind of do that flamboyant over the top impression, but." No, he was grounded in history. He knew what he was talking about, and it's just unprecedented is the word that comes to mind. Vegas is what they're doing is just it's transcendent of any expansion team that came before them. You talk about the Magic. They had Shaq and Penny, a few seasons after they came into the league. Charlotte, they didn't really do anything. Houston, they didn't really do anything. But they took a little time and they established themselves. Florida Panthers, that I mentioned, they made the Stanley Cup Finals with the Colorado Avalanche in the 95-96 season and the 96 playoffs. And, I mean, they got swept 4-0 in the best-of-7 series. But, it takes a number of years for them to gel and for them to really, congeal as a team.
Right. Oh man, with all this talk, we've got to go see a game. We have to. So let's just okay. So you're listening to the podcast. You want to go see a game because you're hyped up. CC's got you with all the knowledge. We know how successful this team is. We want to go see a game. So let's put together I almost said mais ou menos, that was Portuguese. That was in my head. More or less. Let's put together kind of what we would think. So we're here in Idaho. Let's say we're traveling to the game. We're driving. What do you think the cost of gas would be if we split it two ways, right? Let's say you're going with your buddy. I'm going with CC to the game. And what's the mileage down there? It's 700 miles. Is that about right? To 720 miles to Vegas?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that Boise to Redding, I've got family in Redding, California, and Boise to Redding is about 500 miles. So I'd say Boise to Vegas is probably somewhere between 500 and 600 miles.
You might be right. Let me see.
Yeah.
I got 626.5 miles.
Okay.
So you're right about that. 600 miles. Okay, so we're looking 600 miles. We're going to say gas split between the two of us. Probably about, $150?
Yeah.
Total?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
150 to $200.
I mean, you could get a discount airline ticket for $53 too.
Okay, so let's say we do it through Allegiant.
There we go.
Ding, ding, ding. That's my name plug. I better get some money for that. Okay, so we're going through Allegiant, and we're spending less than $100 round trip or $150 max round trip to go. You have to go on a Thursday, come back on a Sunday or whatever it is. They have their rules. So you go there. We're spending $150 for traveling. We get there, and we're going to get a hotel. Do we want to stay on the strip, or do we want to stay outside? You make a call.
Oh, man. Oh, I would want to save as much money as possible, so... A discount motel that's not too seedy.
Okay. So let's just say probably in Vegas, since I've been there a few times, I mean, you could actually get it. We got Bally's on the Strip for $27 a night when it was in the wintertime for the Vegas Bowl a couple years back, because the Strip actually drops the prices drastically in the winter because nobody's there.
Wow.
But let's just say we spend $30 a night on a hotel, because I'm sure we can find one in the wintertime to go watch a game. $30 a night. We stay there for 2 nights. $60. Split it 2 ways. We're looking at about $200 a person so far. What's the cost of a ticket at the game?
Oh man, I looked at prices at the beginning of the season, but knowing that there was an expansion team, and now with the success that they've had, I would guess probably anywhere between 75 and 100 just for the average seat. Yeah.
You know what? You're almost like exactly right. I was checking it yesterday, and that's exactly what I said, because the demand's going up.
Oh,
and,
sure.
Unfortunately, when a team starts doing well, you gotta pay to go see them.
Of course,
and that's how it is. You know what I mean? It happens in any sport. So it does look like even the cheap seats up at the top of the T-Mobile Arena are roughly $75 to $100. So we're looking, let's say $75. We're up to $275 now. Food, and if you're into gambling, which we won't be doing,
correct?
Because I'm not doing it anymore.
Correct.
I'm not doing it anymore. But if you're into gambling, you got to at least take out another $200 to $300, and that's like talking small.
Nope.
But so we're not doing that.
Nope, not gonna do that.
So let's just add some food on there. We're talking $50 to $100 for food for the couple days that we're there, just having fun. We're looking at about a $300 trip to go see Vegas for a couple nights, and that's flying, so the travel's not that long, and experience the Vegas atmosphere, which there are some good things down there. You can go see some cool shows if we wanted to do that. So let's just say $350 to go see it. Would $350 be worth it for you to go see a professional hockey team that's seeing success and experience Vegas for a couple nights and then get back home? I want to know what your thoughts are.
Oh, you already know the answer to this question, Shane. The answer is absolutely. I mean, I've wanted to go to a Vegas Golden Knights game ever since they said that they're putting a franchise in Vegas. And, now that they're pretty well saying that they're going to put an expansion team in Seattle as well. Yeah, I mean, that's another, are we going to fly to Vegas or are we going to fly to Seattle?
Or both.
Or both. Why not?
Boom, boom. We just find the schedule so that it matches up well.
Just fly to Seattle, go straight from Seattle to Vegas, and then go back to Boise.
I mean, reporters do it all the time. Why can't we?
Seriously. I mean, we're reporters, right?
Yeah.
We're quote-unquote media members.
Exactly.
Well, we're more like basement bloggers is what it is.
Well,
but
you have the little pass to get down. You just wear the same thing and just go, and it looks like you're official, and I'm with you. I'll just get a cardboard.
He's a press member for the ECHL.
There you go.
That's the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Not exactly, but it's that would just be a wonderful, just an awesome experience to be amongst. I mean, it gets loud at CenturyLink Arena with 5,000 fans. So to be a part of 17,000, 18,000 fans, and all of them singing out "Sweet Golden Knights." Ba, ba, ba. See, they kind of catered it to, you see what they did there? Yeah, that's kind of their shtick now.
I like it.
Yeah, it's so stinking cool to hear that many people and to see the videos taken on the cell phones. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, it would be a fun experience to be a part of. I would love it.
So here's what we got to do. We're going to wrap it up right now. The goal in mind is to make it to a Golden Knights game. So hopefully CC and I can make it down to a game, and maybe one day, who knows, we'll be back and we'll talk about our experience at the game so that people can actually hear what it was truly like from an outsider's perspective that's not from Vegas, to be able to go down there and watch a game. Was it worth it? Was it not? We'll talk about the prices. Who knows? Let's make it happen. Hopefully somebody else can make it happen that's a listener as well. CC, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
If you haven't seen the Vegas Golden Knights play, whether it be on TV or whether you're in the Vegas market, or you want to fly down to Vegas if you're close by, or go see a Vegas Knights game, Vegas Golden Knights in another hockey market, check them out. The hype is real. The hype is legit. It's not just, superficial. This is the real deal. They are historic. And to take part in that and to see a piece of history is well worth it.
Awesome. You guys heard it here first. CC Hawkley, our hockey expert. For all the listeners, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Before you leave, please head on over to iTunes and leave me a review. I would greatly appreciate it because it helps me out a ton. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support.